But we're in the early stages of this, right? They're talking about another 10,000 kilometres of transmission lines, and to meet renewable energy targets, all the wind farms and solar farms we see now, you've got to sort of time them, multiply them by 10. Isn't that going to alienate a huge amount of arable land?
Well, there's two parts to this discussion. First of all, it is understanding where the projects are going to be placed and having a very clear strategy of what type of infrastructure will go in which zones and which areas. And once again, in agriculture, we are supportive of hosting these projects when they're put into the right place. And it's not just the farm directly hosting these projects that should be consulted. It's the adjoining farms, and having a look at it as a holistic view, so that the off-farm impact, the communities that have to live with the rest of the projects are also included in both the benefits of hosting the projects, but then also making sure that the mitigations, the impacts of having extra traffic, having more security needed around that region is also included in that conversation.
Is there any potential to actually do this, though? We're having this much trouble already, and as I say, we're really got to expand what we're seeing at the moment tenfold. So many communities troubled by it. Do you think it's actually possible to install the amount of renewable energy projects and transmission lines that the government's talking about?
Well, I personally have a transmission line on farmland that we farm, and I also personally have wind towers on property that I own but also lease to farm. And done right, we've been able to manage that as our farming community goes. So I believe there is still opportunity, but this is the point. We have to make sure farmers are consulted. We have to make sure that the infrastructure is in the right spot. Cutting across farmland when it could potentially be done along roadsides with the combination of private and public land instead of just all being on farmland needs to be considered. But more so, having that clear understanding that if a transmission line goes through, what the offspring of the different renewable projects will be, where they'll be placed, and then ultimately where that power goes is a discussion that we still have to have as a wider community, because I strongly believe if these rural communities are hosting these facilities, they should also get the benefit from trying to get industry put around these towns, because what we're seeing is cities growing bigger, regional Australia falling behind in both infrastructure spend and also access to services. And if renewables are a pathway to help turn around that drift away from rural and regional communities and the lack of infrastructure that they've got, let's have that discussion. But it can't all be a one-way street.
David, I know that you say you've got transmission lines and wind turbines on your properties, but there are many farmers who just don't want those on their property. Should they have the right to say no, thank you?
Absolutely, they should have the ability to navigate if they want to be a part of a renewable energy project. If their neighbour has a renewable energy project, that they should also once again be able to have a say or benefit from that project as well, because they've got to use the same roads, they've got to be able to use or go to the same fires if they're volunteer firefighters, and so on and so forth. So that has to be there. But when we talk about transmission lines, we need to be smarter. It shouldn't just be about the shortest, quickest route. If there's an ability to go around farmland, if there's ability once again to go through public forests, public lands, that should be considered. It just shouldn't go down the guts of farmland.
Well, I do think we've only just started to see the beginnings of these problems, because there's so much more to go in, and each one of these projects raises some sort of opposition from somewhere. I just want to get your thoughts then, David, on what this is doing to our national electricity grid. Obviously, power prices are too high now, and we're losing reliability for our electricity supplies. The AEMO warning now that the approaching summer we could face power shortages again, power not able to keep up with demand. Are you worried that this whole renewables push is just not going to deliver?
We are absolutely concerned about the cost of energy and the reliability and the sustainability of our networks. So baseload is the conversation. How do we ensure and maintain that baseload is something that we haven't necessarily nailed. We understand that renewables have a part to play, but actually having that further discussion of what other infrastructure needs to be put into place, what generation that actually incurs, and then also if we're phasing out other productions, say around coal, that we have got a backstop, that we have got an alternative opportunity there. And yes, in our current state, it doesn't feel like that that's been explained well enough, that's been thought through well enough, and it's a conversation that I fear that we need to have before we progress too far down and rely solely on the current infrastructure or the current proposed renewables. But there is a part there to play, and once again, I'm very keen that agriculture has a part in that conversation.
But the trouble is we've got rid of so much baseload power generation already. What do you think is the solution then? How do we actually supply that baseload power?
Well, once again, from agriculture's point of view, we're just interested in making sure that it's affordable and accessible and sustainable and having that continuity of supply, especially when we talk about
does that mean coal? Does that mean gas? Does that mean nuclear?
Well, we're agnostic to the actual production process. What we do know is that the current trajectory that we're on is causing huge concerns for agriculture, and that when we do hear those forecasts about the hot summers and reliability being questioned, it definitely highlights that what we're doing needs to change. We need to have a better thought out process.
David Jochinke, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.